is Industrielle. I work in our private family company called Carbonex. We are producing charcoal or transforming wood into charcoal and for the barbecue market. And we have developed an innovative technology permitting to transform the pyrolysis gases into green electricity. So we are supplying around 10,000 households with green electricity from our plant here in close to 12. So we have based our business model on circular economy. We want to use a maximum of the wood that we're using. We use all the pieces of the wood for different facilities in the company, in the production. We are using the heat that we're producing in our cogeneration for drying the wood and for drying the charcoal briquettes, heating up some of the parts of the factory also. And we are reusing the water we use in the process. We are collecting rainwater that we're also using for fire equipment and etc. We are now looking into other products coming from the charcoal, which are biochar. Maybe some of you have heard about biochar for fertilizing the soils. And we have a lot of different projects that we would like to develop concerning circular economy. Maybe I should pass on and then... Yes? Yeah, okay. A little bit about us.
Hello, my name is Gregory Lannou. I come from Troyes, so I made my studies in UTT. I think you've seen it. And then I worked with Sabrina in the lab in CREIDD. I was the link between the researchers and the companies. So I was used to animate a small community during projects, co-projects, and I was also during that time animating the Club of Industrial Ecology here in Aube. This club is the gathering of companies and also public policymakers, people from agriculture, from industry, people from all over the area of Aube, the department here, and we try to connect the activities of each other's. Mainly now we are using workshops to identify all the resources of the companies. First, we select the companies that are involved in the workshops. We try to aim the companies that are productive companies, not services, so that they have lots of resources like water, energy, wastes, of course, but lots of other resources. For example, logistics. For example, the expertise of the people that are in the company, and so on. And each time we identify one resource, we try to link it to someone who can use it. And for example, Mette and Carbonex, they come to that kind of workshops. We identify it, and then we try to connect it, but we use those who know the best the resources and the use of the resources in their own activities. I mean, the companies and also the policymakers. So we gather them, and then we ask them if they have these resources or if they want it. And then when we identify one of these connections, that's a synergy. And we have a second workshop 15 days after, where we organize some B2B meetings. these B2B meetings, in fact, they are built on a synergy. One synergy is one meeting between two companies. That's as simple as it is. And so we try to optimize the time of these people who have something else to do because they have their own work in their own companies. So we try to be very efficient. We gather them during half a day. We organize all the B2B meetings so that it is optimized and so that our work is also optimized because they discuss as much as possible synergies. Let's say that before we only did the workshops for identifying the synergy, the resources and the synergies. After we had to phone everyone, to call them back, to ask them if they discussed the synergies they had identified, if they met, if they settled the synergies, and in fact it was very time consuming. When I say very, it's very. And it was also not very satisfying because we were always phoning them and let's say boring them. Mm-hmm. So at the end, they were just sorry that they did not have time to do so. And in fact, what we did with the organization of the second workshop with the B2B meetings was to give them the opportunity to put in their agenda a special schedule for that. And with the first method only, we had something like 20% of the synergies identified that were discussed. With the second method, we have 80% of the synergies that are discussed. So it's a lot. It's a very good optimization for us, and it's a lot of time saved also for us to put it in the settling of those synergies accompanying the company. So that's our main way to do here in Aube to go further. Each time we identify something like 140 resources and something like 100 synergies, potential synergies. Let's say that most of them will never see the light. But if in half a day we go through something like 2 to 4 synergies, that's all right. We have divided the area in 5 sectors, and we try to have one workshop per year in each sector, so that we see, well, not everyone, but we invite all the companies of this area, and they come or they don't come, but at the minimum they mix their experience. They participate to something bigger than their own company and their own market. And most of the time they are very happy to talk with the neighbor, because they not all the time know their own neighbors. And if they know the neighbor, they might not know the activity of their neighbor. So it's a good way also to exchange information first before exchanging resources. But all these began with a very systematic study of the flows of the companies here in the area. Sabrina took part of it at the beginning of these studies, but we quite rapidly saw that it was limited, because it's also very time consuming, and the data is not updated. Once you make the turn of all the companies, then you can go back to the first and do it again. So now that we have lots of digital means, might be able to appreciate and analyze the data better. But you have to have the authorization, you have to, the companies have to understand that you are not here to sell them anything. You're there to help them. And that's not always very simple to make them understand that. Because when you call them to invite them to the workshops, well, they maybe have had 20 calls before, just to sell them something. So they have a very good way to, let's say, filter you. They have supplementaries. And
But also, if I may add a comment, it's a very, very good exercise that you're helping us to look into. We are discovering a lot of, I think that's why you get a lot of bad answers about not wanting to join, but we are actually discovering during these sessions all these products that we have and that can be used, or services that we can offer or exchange that we didn't know about. The first time I was joining the workshop, I was like, but I have nothing to offer. We use everything internally, and what can I offer or help the other companies with? And then we found out that we had a lot of pallets that could be used, or we could use some extra storage space, or common transport solutions, or there were a lot of things that we didn't have time to look into, because we all have our agendas full, and no time for looking for more subjects. And that was actually a very interesting exercise. And I regret that I didn't participate more in it. But again, we are already using a lot internally. Or maybe give the companies, not from your side, but maybe if the companies have some kind of bonus for every, maybe that's more, should look into that. If the companies have some kind of bonus or tax deduction or something for every time they are able to reuse what you call waste, what we don't call waste, doesn't it? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. But it could be interesting, instead of asking for money for a project or try to fill out all those forms that are just so complicated that we either give up or always get a negative answer. So we're like, oh my god, at them it's like impossible to get anything out of, because the forms are so strict, and you have to do it in a certain way. And out here in the companies, we are being creative, and we want to do it in our own way, not from point A to B to C to D. That's not how it works out there in real life. It's like, hey, we have this up here, we can use it down here now. And what if we explore another resource or something like that? And we can't fill in the forms, because it's not like something that already exists. It's being made up, or it's being developed every day out there. So the old-fashioned way of filling out a form just doesn't fit in the company's way of working today, I think. But I think the workshops helping us a lot.
Yes, and thanks. And once you've put on the table all your resources, just as pallets, cardboard, and so on, which are quite often in all the companies, then you go through the interesting resources. But first you have to begin by the beginning. And so the point is that when you come back to the workshops, not all the time, because with all the time the same companies, it doesn't work. But when you mix and you come back, let's say once a year, while we have 5 workshops per year, then that's all right. Then you can exchange very interesting things, and the diversity makes it really interesting. We also developed recently, as you said, in the companies there are many things. We developed a new kind of a concept, which is a concept for the people at home. I don't know the word in English.
Open and selling out.
Yeah, you know when you have.
Open down. Narrative.
Exactly. Thank you. So we wanted to apply it to companies. So in fact, one of our members asked us to do so, and so we said, well, that's a very good idea. We knew that something like that happened in EDF, the electric company in France, a few years ago, but it was at the EDF scale. We wanted to do it at a small company scale. So we made it in December, and in fact we were very pleased to see lots of companies who were interested in the things that we published it in kind of a catalog on the internet, and that was only for the companies, and if they were interested they could come and have a look and buy it, so that the materials, the machines don't go through to the beam, and they have a second life. Sometimes that was just for the pieces of the machine, not the whole machine, but that was the second life whenever. So, and the press was very pleased with that kind of new concept, and they asked us if we do once again to call them to have some interviews and so on. So it also pleased the CEO of the company, because it works for a good image of its activity, and so we are very open to all these ideas that give a second life to the resources, the raw material, and so on. So that's what we do here in the club, and if you're more interested on special particular synergies, then we can have a talk later.
Well, I am Florian Bratec. I'm the co-founder of the company Altermaker, and I'm now in charge of research and development there. This company is specializing on software development, mainly on eco-design and lifecycle assessment projects, but we generally work on sustainability purposes and, of course, circular economy. We created this company 4 years ago, and in 4 years we had occasion to work with really several types of companies, from the smallest ones to major international groups. And the common trait of this company is that they are all designers. They all design or at least manufacture a product that could be a good or a system or even service. About eco-design and circular economy, there's something I'd like to highlight, because as you understood, my field is more eco-design. I think we all have the same picture coming up in mind when we are thinking about circularity. It's a loop and a waste, how we could loop the waste. Of course, at the end of life of a product, the product lost its values and becomes a waste. And I think we will all be agree if I say that the best waste is no waste. Okay, this is something that could be possible to really reduce or minimize the waste, but only at one condition, that if you think about it at the very beginning of the design process. And today, from my point of view, eco-design is the best way, or even the only way, to avoid waste, really from the beginning. And that's why these companies are working with us. With an eco-design strategy to reach circularity goals. And with software, so when I say tool, it could be a software, but it also could be a good guidebook or standard. Why software? Because sometimes, depending on the context of the company, eco-design and circularity could deal with complexity and high complexity. I'd like to share with you an example. Last year, one of our clients, it's a big group from the sector of aeronautics. They came to us with a document, a huge document. It was a bill of materials with thousands and thousands of materials, parts and components inside. And it was the bill of materials of a plane, an entire plane. The problem was, if they wanted to study really deeply this bill of materials, to really understand the inputs, outputs of waste, energy, materials, and the environmental issues, it required at least 2 years of study and human resources behind. So it's complicated because in 2 years the main decisions would be made before. So we developed methodology with them and software that is now plugged directly to their information system, so as to launch calculations of environmental impact, substance impact, and waste management scoring in real time. I mean, when they pick up the components or the parts in their database, in real time the calculation is launched, and they can choose, and they can, in fact, they can make the right decision at the right moment. I mean, in a plane, for many components, several suppliers could be available, if it's feasible. I mean, from the economical point of view, technical point of view, etc. So if it could avoid waste at the end, or if the environmental performance could be higher, they could directly choose the right one, depending on the context. So that's why, in this case, software were really interesting. But complexity also deals with smaller products. I can tell you that last year or so, we worked on with a company. They manufacture mattresses. We could think that a mattress is a very simple product, like foam and only textile, but not. It's really much more complex. And something interesting with the mattress is that we could identify that many parts had a really low functional value. For a mattress, the main function is to allow the user to sleep well and preserve the back. That's it. And if you turn the mattress, you could try when you go back home or in your hotel. They all have like a diagonal tag sewn in the corner, and we could identify that this tag has a pretty high impact due to the inks we use to print on the textile, and there is no functional value for you. With or without the tag, you will sleep as well. So
have you tried without?
We tried without the tag, and that's validated. So in this case, again, eco-design was a good way to reach some circularity goals. Maybe a last example. We also worked with a big company on mass distribution, and this company has had a strategic, really goals developed in many areas, considering circularity but also eco-design, and for several years. But working with them, they noticed that the highest contribution of their impact on environmental issues and also social ones came from the suppliers. So due to that, we developed with them a platform to assess the suppliers in real time also. So they passed from classical technical strategy of optimization on site, like decrease the energy demand, etc., etc., to a strategy of responsible purchasing with the suppliers. So doing this, they reach their circularity goals and could define higher ones. So if you want some details of this project after, you could ask also. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Maybe before to have some question, maybe Adrian, could you explain also what happened in the national level with the national program of industrial symbiosis? What will be done in the different regions, because it's something very similar.
Yeah, it's done.
Yes.
Yeah, National Industrial Symbiosis Program has been a program experimented during 2 years in France, in 4 regions. So there has been Bretagne, Normandie, Nouvelle-Aquitaine, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes. And the goal was to apply a new industrial symbiosis method that comes from England, UK, where come from England with different methodologies that what was done in France before, it's the same methodology that CREIDD implemented here. Before, the use was to have diagnostic, resource diagnostic, full resource diagnostic in every company of, for example, an activity area. Indeed, it took a lot of time, and before going back to the companies with opportunities of synergies, some companies were closed, some totally changed their issues, etc. So now the PNSI wanted to try something new. Some things worked, some weren't that adapted to French context as well. So, and a researcher from UTT had his thesis on that subject. So the reality in France is might be between the two. So this program has been conducted during 2 years. Now there is a synapse. There is a national organization that works on industrial symbiosis, and that is studying the tools, the issues about industrial symbiosis, how to develop it, how to massify it, how to share metrics, database, etc. So this is still a big issue, a big program in France. There have been a lot of evolution for I don't know, no better than 25 years, a bit less. Okay, 20 years. a lot of evolution. I come back on what you said before. There is not just the facilitating action that has to be regarded. There are also macro incentives to be given. We discussed some this morning, fiscality, might be other ways. You spoke about maybe certificates to encourage the use of secondary raw materials. For example, in France we have an interesting model for energy that is called certificate for energy savings, where the big producers of energy have obligation and can and have to realize savings of energy directly by themselves or by a system that awards small structures or even citizens or local authorities to do action for energy saving. And now it's not included in the law that has been voted last week, but there are experimentations that are starting in some regions to give value for resource savings, primary material savings through recycling or prevention. As well with eco-conception, eco-design, there has been some evolution that Nathalie Boyer described, I think, a bit this morning, in extended producer responsibility to include some way of eco-modulation. So producers at one point that will eco-design their products will be awarded in paying less eco-contribution, and the others at the other side, producers that produce products that don't have a long lifetime, which contains hazardous substances, would have malus on their eco-contribution, and that could go until 20% of the price of the products. So at one point that could be strong incentives. We have to see the application of the law, of course, but this could be strong incentive for recycling and for design.
Thank you. Do you have questions?
Thanks for the introduction. We're working very interesting things. I have a question for Gregory, a little bit also for Adrian. I was trying to imagine the process of identifying the synergies through the workshops and develop those industrial symbiosis. So let's say you buy companies and you identify, they tell you the resources they need and the waste they produce. How do you go from there to really identifying synergies? You guys work with a, let's say, have you accumulated a large database, I guess, of tons of, because there's millions of cases that are constantly coming and new uses of different resources. So how did you work on that, and how did you train your facilitators and users?
So, I don't know if the answer will disappoint you, but no, we don't work first on it, because, you know, with more than 15 years on the subject, we identified that the knowledge is not here, it's in the head of the CEO of the companies. So we use them, we involve them, we don't do it instead of them, and I think that it's the key.
So you only work with CEO?
Yes,
sure.
Not
Not only the CEO, I mean the CEO, because last time, the last workshop, they were only CEOs. I was quite amazed. Everyone right on time, no one missing, that was the first time. So, the conditions are not too many people. Most of the time we do it with 20 companies. One workshop, 20 companies. And it gives you the figures I told you. So around 140 resources and something like 100 potential synergies. So we ask them, we have very simple charts, we ask them their resources. One paper, one resource. 2 colors, I want. That's the method of the English from ISL. And we work with it, we put it. So that's easy. Then first of all, it's hard to write for them. But we have on each table facilitators, that's also the method. And for example, Sabrina is facilitator. But we also involve people in charge of economic development here in Troyes or in the region. We also involve people from the industrial commerce chamber. People like that, you know, they are neutral, but they are involved. They don't take participation in any companies, but they are involved on the development of their territories or on the development of the subjects, such as UTT with the CREIDD. So they do the job. We are very small. We are only 3 people in the club, permanent, and not for full times. I just spend 20% of my time on the club. Otherwise, I'm also directing a cluster on biogas in France. So it's 80% of my time. I have 1 full-time person and 40% time person, because I also belong to an employer group. So we share some employees, which is kind of a synergy about expertise. So we cannot do the job. If we want to be if we want to explore all that could be done, we would be very frustrated. So we are more opportunists because we know that we are small, and that's why that method is very good for us. And it fits very well also with the companies involved, because they appreciate to be involved. They appreciate to be part of what is done. They do not want, in fact, we had to go through that to understand it. They don't want to just give you the data, you work, and then you come back with the knowledge. No, it doesn't work. Most of the time you just come back saying, well, you could maybe materialize pallet collects or cardboard collects. It's not very sexy to involve a dynamic on the territory, and also it's not very efficient. You have to do it, but not only. So if you give them the opportunity to make it, then there are ideas we couldn't have seen by ourselves. For example, with you. Unfortunately, it couldn't go through, but there was a company that was washing tanks, big tanks, that were transporting flour. Not flowers, flour. So when they washed it, the water was charged with, I don't know how you say that, amidon. And in fact, Mette, in a process, she used it. She used to use it. And that's the reason why it couldn't go through, because with the wood, she could make some briquettes, yes, with the very small part of it, gluing it, sticking it with that material, natural material. But when you say you have a company that washes tanks and a company that has the work of Carbonex, well, you don't see the connection directly. Even if you're very clever, even if you spend a lot of time, you don't see it. Except if you put it together, yes, except if you put them together and if you create the conditions for them to talk about that subject.
So you haven't accumulated a database. I mean, you only put the right conditions. You only facilitate this.
Of course, I capitalize it in a database, but afterwards. So first of all, I'm just a wedding maker.
Then the key question is, who are the companies you are inviting, right? I mean, it's the right mix of companies who makes those synergies to happen. If you put all the companies from the same industry, probably not many synergies. If it's from different ones,
That's the reason why we want that diversity. And in fact, even if we wanted to gather all the companies of the same sector, we don't have so many in the same sector. So the diversity is the base for us. Anyway.
How do you choose?
We choose them just, the only criteria is company of production, not services. Because services, we tried at first to mix all of it. It doesn't work very well. Services, the barrier is very tight between the service they want to sell and the service they can exchange. And we are not there to make their own business. There are places for that. That's very good. It has to be done, but it's not our work. So with production, that's very easy, in fact.
Thanks for the interesting presentation. I was wondering, because in research you always read that you can't really plan for industrial symbiosis, but there has to be trust between companies. So how do you create, or how do you balance these two? Because I was thinking for you, you want to do a national program which is planned, and then but you want to create trust at the same time. So how does that work?
Here we have champagne.
No, but it was a national program, but national program, it meant different programs that were led in parallel, in fact. But each, it was a sort of big gathering of small programs that were still addressed at the very local level with facilitators from local associations, from Chamber of Commerce, local authorities, any kind of organization, gathering again CEO or technical operators for local sites, and gathering them in workshop to create the dynamic and the trust between the actors. So it's in fact it's the same process. It's complicated to imagine programs of industrial symbiosis at a much larger scale. We tried to consolidate data at national level between the different regions. Maybe you had some synergies from one region to another, but it was quite rare, and on some very specific kind of materials that had really high added value, and so they could travel a lot with environmental and economic added value for the synergy. But it was for really specific flows on metals, this kind of things. And just I think big data can play a role, and there are some companies who are launching their economic model more based on it. INEC, for example, there are more this kind of approach, but it's a bit different. It's more focused on, for example, one big economic actor which wants to make its sourcing locally with local activities, and it's not the same philosophy. It's more, okay, I need some organic matter around my territory. I don't know exactly how to look for it, so maybe this operator which is working on big data can tell me attack all the points on the territory at a local level where I can find that.
2 points. First, I was not, when I said champagne, that was true, because I mean conviviality, it's a value that we want to have each time. If you're in an area with beer, you can do it with beer, or apple juice if you want, but nevertheless, you have to make the dialogue between the people who might know each other, but personally, or as a CEO in the Chamber of Commerce, they see each other. One point is very important: the peer-to-peer exchange. if people are talking to their peer, they will exchange a lot more. So that posture is very important. Second one, as you said, proximity. In Aube, we have the area of the French department, which is very large. I don't know if there are any other industrial ecology association at that scale. So the scale is Lot-et-Garonne also, yeah. So the scale of the department is quite large. Most of the time it's a bit smaller. And for INEC, I saw them last week because we were at the same professional trade fair on biogas in Nantes. And so we discussed with their solution that I knew for industrial ecology that they want to apply to biogas. And in fact, it works very good, but they have difficulties to sell it for industrial ecology. I think the big data analysis has a better future, including a reality in business, if they apply it to markets. They have to apply to sectors, markets, for example, biogas or biomass. For example, the reusing of a certain type of material for a certain type of industrial sector. And I think that's the key also.
We have here.
Hi, I have the mic. Thank you very much for your presentations. I have a question for Florian. I think it's very interesting that you are talking now not only about eco-design inside of a company and not only about designers, but also involving the purchasing departments that are assessing the suppliers. And I wanted to ask you, like, how do you do to create, I don't know, like this common language between the departments? Because designers, we talk very differently than the people that is purchasing, so that we have like the same understanding of what could be like the best sustainability option.
Yes, thanks for this question. That's right. It's really, really complicated to have good dialogue between purchasing and design. Actually, for all of these projects, mixing these two approaches, we work also with consultants, and the software is not enough. The software is good to speed up the process, to push some ideas, to gather the data, but it's not enough. Right? The human factor is really important, and I think it will always be the software is not for that. And just to have a word on the data, the question on the data. 2 years ago, we launched a project with UTT, project of machine learning to try to automate eco-design. If the software could or not identify some substitute materials or process to put the material in form. The results were pretty cool, but the feasibility is another field. The economical feasibility, technical, the proximity between actors. We discussed about it, and the data is changing too fast. So the results of this experimentation is not so good because of that. The feasibility behind is too much related to humans. So the answer is the same. Human.
Hi, Florian. I also have a question for you. What do you think is the way of eco-design, implementing eco-design principles into the design of a product? irrespective of other decisions such as economic constraints, functionality constraints, and all this kind of narrow design space that designers already have. And do you really think it's making a difference towards more sustainability?
Yeah, in fact, I was really surprised. Many of the companies we worked with had identified several substitutes for many components or parts. I mean, for a specific mechanical part in a plane, we could have 10 different suppliers. All these components could do the job, but they just didn't know which one to choose. I mean, if they selected these ones, that means that for them it's feasible. It's not too expensive. It's okay. The only data missing was the environmental data, and for them, the hazardous substance, environmental score impacts, like on biodiversity, for example, and the waste management topic. So I was surprised, but they did the job before.
Pass it on.
Thank you. So I have a question about territory, since it's very important for this workshop. So Gregory, you represent the region. You work with 20 companies. I'm interested, how do the companies think about territory? In other words, are they companies that are just happen to be in L'Aube, in this region, or are they operations territorial? Do they think about their operations territorially? So in other words, can the idea of territory be, is it something that is meaningful or relevant to the companies that you are working with? This could be a question that Mette could also answer.
And I think she's got part of the answer. It's a very large question that you ask.
I'm good at those.
Let's say that, first of all, I deal with very different companies. So some of them are family companies, as Carbonex. Some of them are national or international companies, and it's very different because most of the time the director of the company or the person that is responsible on the environmental aspects in the company, they have a policy to apply, and so they don't have all the facilities they would like to have to make decisions and so on. So if you are with a small company that is on the territory for a very long time, that's a lot easier because you have the answer right now. It's yes or no. I want to work with you or I don't want. Maybe sometimes it's in the middle, I'm not ready to right now because lots of reasons. But you have an answer. When you have a very large company, without the decision that can be made on the territory, and that's the link, then it's a lot different. For example, we are working with Michelin, which is a well-known company. They have their decision, their social headquarters. Yes, thank you. In Auvergne, so in the middle of France, and they have a site here, huge site for agriculture tires, which has lots of potential synergies. But first of all, they have to ask to the headquarters if they have the permission to do so. So most of the time it's a long process if they want to be involved, and they want, or sometimes for the director of the site, they just don't want to ask because they have so many things to deal with, and it will take some time to get the answer. It will add a file to the pile that is quite high enough for them, and they know that they are here for 2 or 3 years before being the director of another site. So that's it. So when we said proximity at the geographical scale, it was also meaning that, and we can see it. But if we make possible industrial ecology in the policy of those big companies, then that will go from the head from the top to the sites on the territories, and they will ask us to help them to do so. But if that goes the other way, doesn't work. But here, that's.
Could you please answer?
Yes.
You are the company.
Of course.
We are what?
You are the company of the territories.
Yes. One of the companies. Yeah, I would say the more the merrier, of course, and the more we are, the easier it is to get things through, and having common interests, especially in circular economy, we need to be more companies involved, and to get our demands through, and to get our answers also, because that is one of the issues, that we want to have more time to develop projects with so-called waste. We need time and we need energy, and we already have a lot of things going on, even in the small companies. So yes, when we are heard by the region, or if the region can guide us, it's very nice to be joining the club.
I think Martin had a question.
How do you know, or do you do LCAs of the environmental impacts of the industrial symbiosis options that you take? And if you do you know if you're actually reducing the domestic material demand or the footprint of the companies involved? Or do you take into account rebound effects as well?
In Carbonex, we have done our carbon footprint on our production side, but we have not done the ACAs yet. But we are working on it. But still, or again, when the development is going so fast, you have to do it over and over again. And it's, for us, circular economy is one of our values. It's our philosophy to work that way. So it's like a general way of thinking. Hey, we have all this energy, what can we use it for? We don't want to waste it. We still have enough energy. So we could heat up a public pool, we could heat up greenhouses. We have many projects that we would like to realize, but we need time. We need to be able to work on these projects and also be recognized for them, and not being punished because we are not treating the waste in a certain amount of time that doesn't give us the liberty of developing correctly. But it's a matter of thinking, actually. We want to avoid, for example, our direct competition is imported products on the market. In France, we are importing more than 100,000 tons of charcoal coming from all over the world, deforestation, bad working conditions, and charcoal is not being considered as a wood product for the imported product. You cannot import wood without a lot of restrictions and rules and laws, but charcoal, nobody is looking into charcoal, and we are fighting for having charcoal under those rules, because we are treating our smokes and we are having good working conditions in Europe, and we're using well-managed forests. We have all these things in consideration when we are producing here in Europe. And again, the market just import a product that is cheaper and being produced, as I just mentioned. That is one of the big problems that we meet in the companies today, and it's not only in the charcoal, it's all kind of products. That is, I think, one of the difficulties that we are confronting every day. But again, because people are more aware of reusing and using waste, and the mentality is changing, people is demanding more for sustainable products, and are changing their minds about just buying and wasting, and want a sustainable and responsible product. They're looking more into where it is produced and where the raw material comes from, and that helps us a lot because it is our philosophy from the beginning. So.
And for us, we don't do systematically an assessment of the potential synergies. We try to, because we don't have enough money for that. That's quite time, but money also, because you can buy sometimes if you've got the money for that. But I trust also in something that is well developed for everyone. It's intuition. You have to, of course, you have to assess it if you can. But first of all, you have to feel it. If you check every potential synergy and try to have a reflection with other people also and people involved, then you have the pro and the cons, and you try to make your own intuition about if it's good or not. If it's not, then you avoid it, and if it's alright, then you might dig a little further.
I would have a question for Florian. Just wondering, without going too much into the secrets of your business, like what kind of LCA databases do you use, or do you use LCAs? And do you also, I don't know, are you also in contact with recyclers, for instance, to know how you could recycle potentially things that you propose for the design?
Yeah. Yes, we provide some LCA solutions. In terms of database, we use really a lot of database, EcoInvent. We have also a really good database in France, based impacts. It's a free open source database for LCA. We also do a lot of regionalized LCA because I'm also ending a PhD on that topic, so that's why we are doing a lot about it. So that was for your first question, and the second one was
about the recycling or the recyclability assessment with local recycling companies.
Okay. We have some contacts for specifically for the end of life, because in France we have a good national group working on it to have some data about the end of life impacts. But no, we don't have any contacts to propose end of life solutions to for recycling or any kind of valorization. So no, we tried to do this maybe 3 years ago, but it's really complicated because we need to propose a big database and the contexts are always changing, and when you it's maybe 6 months of work, and when it's ended, maybe half of your database should be should be renewed. So it's really complicated for us. Thanks for this question.
Walter, you had a question?
Yes, maybe. Yeah, thank you all for your inspirational talk about the practical application of. I'm not sure if it's.
Yeah.
Yes, it's on. Yeah. I have a more general question which I would like to pose to each of you. Regretfully, one is already leaving. Fine, okay, I understand, but it's interesting to hear the practical application of some of the concepts that are, well, maybe 10, 15, or even sometimes a little bit older already, and to see how this is landing then and still facing all kinds of problems. Now, we wrote this article about circular economy, which we gave the title 3.0, and with the current new discussion, a refurbished version of older things. And this links to my question a little bit. You all have a longer history in the field. My question would be, you see at the European Union level there's a new roadmap, there's a French new roadmap, in all the countries there are new roadmaps for this. What do you experience now in the last, let's say, 2, 3, 4 years, in the sense of what is changing in how circular economy is formulated, phrased, and what type of ambitions that are given? And does it help you in the practice and all the kinds of obstacles that you are observing? And if it's not helping, what would you need from these roadmaps, these programs, these national programs to really support the things that are not possible at this stage? Question for each of you.
Of course it helps, it's like a guideline. Of course, we all need guidelines to go on with, and the communication about how to use waste and how to become a circular economy involved company. All the communication about it is worth it, I think, and people are becoming aware of how it functions, and then again, from both sides, information can come up with new ideas for either in the clubs or also becoming having a label or whatever is proposed. So I would definitely call it a good guideline for us.
We began in 2003, and the first conference in France was in Troyes in 1999. So I have seen a very large change. At the beginning we were two, Ecopal in Dunkerque and us, to practice industrial ecology, to try to, yeah, that's right, the details. And first of all, each time we had to explain. Right now, the difference is that when you say, well, I'm working in circular economy, even to my mom, when I try to explain what is my job, it's not quite easy. Now, it's like something they have heard about. So, for the policymakers, for the industrials, it's something they think they know, even if you sometimes have to explain again, but that's our work also, and they want to practice. So that's the main difference. I wouldn't say in the past 2 or 3 years, maybe in the past 5 or 6 years, but it's better. And now we are a lot more practicing it. What I would say to those people is something I see, and I'm also involved in Synapse, which is the French association. I represent the Grand-Est region there. I try to say to those who give subsidies to those who practice, not to give it to everybody. And I will tell you why. In fact, we can see that the policymakers, they want to have some kind of club everywhere. That's a very good idea, but they don't have the money for that. So they give some subsidies for 3 years, so that people just begin to do something, to create the structure, to begin to do some workshops, and then they cut, most of the time. And they tell them, you have to find your own model to be be at your comment on dit, équilibré? Yeah, to be able to continue with your own money. That's not easy. In more than 15 years, we did not come to that point. It's better. We do not depend as much on subsidies as we used to do, but it's not the balance. That was the word I was looking for. So I would tell them to identify the few association or whatever that practices industrial ecology on the territories, and to ask them to get a little bit bigger on a geographical point of view, not more than one department, as I said, because it's large enough, and then you lose proximity, which is a very high value point, and you strengthen the economical model of the structure, so that you can practice more and involve more companies. And then there have been studies, I think it's also in the publications, about comparison of lots of economical models with fees on the synergies. Doesn't work very well, or at least not everywhere, most of the time, because you save money, you don't earn money. And in one case the money exists, and in the other one it doesn't exist because you saved it. So it's quite difficult to be paid on that. What we try to do is to be involved in the local councils, agglomerations, cities, and so on. And we are seen as the operator of circular economy. And we have subsidies for that, or payments for that. And it's 2 years that we are working on that way, and it's a way to be there in the next years when we will talk about industrial ecology, and not to be dead, I think. And it works because the policy, the EU policy and the national policy integrates those points, so that the local policymakers integrate those points.
Yeah, just to add a word, from my point of view, circular economy is an old concept, and I totally agree. Maybe 5-10 years before, we were compelled to explain what is at least sustainability for some companies. Today, I think it's much more clear, and it's now part of common sense, and I'm pretty optimistic about this. It's easier and easier to discuss with several companies, even if they are designer, marketing, or whatever. I'm pretty optimistic about it, but I'm quite young, so I should.